Hello, my name is Margaret Adele, and welcome to the April Roll for TBR, my TBRPG where I put my reading in the hands of a D20 and the dice gods. First, let's go over how things went in March. The good news is I got a nat win. I read all of the books exactly as I picked them out, which means that I will be rolling for 7 books this time around. The bad news is I got next to no review books read. I only had 1 on my TBR as a result of the dice, and I originally had intended to read more in the second half of the month. So I would use the first half to read all the books on my TBR and then finish out with various review books. However, the Trans Rights Readathon got announced, and I really want to partake in that. So I kind of shoved everything else to the side. I had to make some room in my TBR challenge to get the new books that I needed for it. And at the time, I didn't have any review books. I did have a return author that was trans offering me a copy. However, I knew that it was going to be really, really dark with a lot of like trigger warnings and isms and stuff. And that's never a smart book to include in a readathon, especially when it's a review book. So I said, no, push that off until April, not for now. But that means that I only read 2 review books, and one of which I actually started in February. So I only read 1 review book start to finish in March. So not my best. I didn't even get any rerolls, which I always forget to use them anyway, so it's not like the biggest of deals. I'm still really proud of myself for getting that nat win and having that +3 modifier for this time around. But in general, I really, really, really need to focus on review books this month. I also have the Realm of the Readathon or Realmathon going on throughout April. However, thankfully, this is not a standard you must fulfill all of these prompts type readathon. This is these prompts decide how many points you get to attack or defend type of thing, and they can be reused. However, this does mean that I'm going to focus on some books or some book types that might give me a few more points for my team, because my team is surprisingly competitive. So I am going to be focusing a lot on indie spooky books, horrors, thrillers, that kind of stuff. And I do have some on my review list, so I'm really hoping that there's a way for me to like somehow fit that into this. The good news is that April is the month where I pause my TBR challenge because it's the month of my birthday, so I might get like gift cards and stuff. And I already have like a list of books that I am like prepared to buy. I'm gonna go on a mini ebook spending spree in April, mostly because my ebooks are so low. I think I have like 5 unread ebooks on my Kindle app right now. That is mind-boggling. Super proud of me. But also, that means I don't have a lot to choose from if I'm just out and about and want to start reading a book. So, I'm going to add a whole lot more of those. But thankfully, with that TBR challenge paused, if I have something come up that is not a book I own, I can just say, okay, I'll just get that now. Because that does also include like library picks. But first things first, let's go over what I read in March and what I thought of it. First, we had to read a BIPOC author, and I picked How to Catch a Queen by Alyssa Cole. I literally picked this one because I really wanted to get to the sequel to this one because it's a Sapphic Anastasia retelling. This is all about a woman who has trained her entire life to be a queen, and she like desperately wants to specifically be a queen and ends up getting the arranged marriage she wants, only it's in a country that doesn't think highly of their queens, so she has to fight to be taken seriously and also fight for the rights of others. I really, really liked this one. I liked the more kitschy concepts of royalty, of there being like a dating site specifically for royalty, and how all like the royals of all these various little kingdoms were like in the same group chat. There's a lot of little cute rom-com moments like that. I also loved the very redemptive aspects to it, how a lot of the answers to the problems was not kick them out of your life forever, but fix things in the best way you can and heal. A lot of talk about generational trauma because this is an African-based country that not 50 years ago was being, colonized, and so there's a lot of still very fresh wounds from that. And I really liked it. I liked it, I think, a lot more than I was expecting to, purely because I was seeing it as a point A to point B to get to the next book. But this makes me even more excited for the next book, that I liked this one so much and it wasn't even the one I was looking forward to. So I'm definitely hoping I can fit that one onto the next TBR. Up next was the prompt, continue a series. I was really happy to get this one because it was my only review book for the month that I read front to back. And that is Grandmaster Arcanist by Shami Stovall. This, I wasn't aware that this was the final book of the Frith Chronicles. I was kind of caught off guard by that, and I was really sad. I should have seen it coming, admittedly, but I don't even bother reading the synopsis of these anymore. Shammy just sends me the books, and I say, okay, I will read. And I had all the emotions, all the feels. I spent my spring break reading it. As usual, I almost always spend my spring break reading some thick Shammy Stovall book. I did think that it was kind of racing through it a little bit. Part of the reason that I thought there was at least one other book beyond this one was the fact that there was just so much story left that at times this book did feel like it was trying to race to wrap everything up. But the final scenes, perfection, no notes. And it showed that Shammy Stovall not only can do the giant, big, bombastic explosion fights, but also have really quiet, dramatic, angsty scenes as well for her finales. And I basically turned around and I said, hey, okay, Shammy, I finished it. So send me Academy Arcanist, which is a dovetail series in this same universe that it's kind of hinted at in this one. So I'm jumping right back into the universe, right back in with another book series. I don't even usually like magic schools, but I'll accept it from Shammy. She's grandfathered in at this point. So really like this one. I will have the review down in the description below. The only review book I read from front to back. Not thrilled about that, but at least I got this one read, and hopefully the next series from this author won't all be giant tomes, you know. Up next was a book turned into a movie. For this one, I went with Legally Blonde by Amanda Brown. Yes, it was originally a book, and I had originally intended to do a reading vlog, but as I started it, I realized, no. I'm going to do a little mini rambling discussion, a video essay on why I think the movie and musical is better than the book. The book was such a huge letdown after loving specifically the musical for me as long as I have, because Elle Woods is such a mean character and judgmental in the book in the way that she isn't in any of the story's future adaptations. And it makes me really sad. It has that very classic early 2000s judgmental, snarky nature that I hate. And also a lot of the most iconic bits from the movie, from the musical, aren't in the book. Those were movie originals. Things like Emmett Forrest and Paulette's whole thing with the UPS guy and her dog and all of that, and the bend and snap. There's so many moments that are so iconic from the movie that are from the movie specifically. But I ended up doing an entire rambling discussion on why it was better, what changes were made to the story, and why I thought that the script writers of the movie did such a brilliant job pulling it out of such a lackluster book. But I do still recommend it, if for no other reason than to just see what it's like and compare it to its future adaptations. But in general, yeah, this is one of those rare occurrences where the movie is better. Up next was a short story or poetry collection, and for this one I went with Farther Reefs by Space Wizard Science Fantasy Press. And yes, I finally read the anthology that I was published in. I got all of the other stories read too. But there was part of me that kind of at certain times felt like I had missed the picture, because there was so much more world building in everyone else's stories, more so than mine. And mine was purposefully very low-key. It was just supposed to be pirates, and there's this one Sirens Strait that you need to know about. You don't need to know about any other like world building things, but a lot of these had like full magic systems that had to be explained and all of that. So a lot of these stories were very daunting for me, because a lot of them read like the first 30 pages of a high fantasy or a high sci-fi novel where they're trying to explain a bunch of world building stuff to you. So it read a lot more slowly than I had anticipated, but I loved all the creativity that went into it. I did like a lot of the world building once I could get my brain to function on it, but in general, I also loved that there was some polycule, some polyamory. That was fun. Just in general, I am very proud to have been published in this collection along with these other great authors. At some point, I am gonna try to start submitting short stories, but I kind of got spoiled with this one, and I'm not going to talk too much about payment and stuff, but when I have compared what other anthologies are offering for short stories for their collections compared to what I got paid for this, it is so hard to have any motivation to put out short stories when I know how much I theoretically could be making, and instead being like, oh, you get $15 or a copy of the anthology. Like, no. I gotta get back to it though. I gotta get back to writing in general. The next one was a sci-fi, and for this one I went with Shockwave by Lindsay Buroker. This was done with purpose. I wanted to start another series by this author to convince myself to finally finish out the other series that I desperately need to finish by her. But this one was all about a engineer, or like a robotics scientist professor dude who finds out that someone's trying to kill him using his own creations. He helped create what he thought were supposed to be like defenders and protectors for the military. No, JK, they're weapons. And now he's on the run and he gets mixed up with bounty hunters and pirates and all of that. It was a lot longer than I'm used to with this author's work, but I really enjoyed it. And in general, I think I can finally give myself the leeway to finish the other one. In general, I would really hope that this one gives me all the same feels. It doesn't feel quite as... It doesn't grip me quite from the start as much as the other one did, but it is longer, so there's more fun to be played with there, and there were some great reveals. So fingers crossed this series can hold me and help me close out the last one and finally be done with it after, what, 3-4 years now? And lastly, I had another prompt for BIPOC author. I get this prompt a lot. I feel like my dice are judging me for not reading diversely enough. But for this one, I picked Everything, Everything by Nicola Yoon. This was one of those sick kid falling in love stories, but thankfully did buck the trend, did have that kind of happy ending. It has a giant twist that I wasn't expecting. I won't tell you what it is, but that was a bit surprising. But also, the twist kind of made me feel very validated, because there was one character specifically that I was like, I don't like you. I don't trust you. And the twist validated me. I love when that happens. The romance was properly adorable. Loved both of our young lovers. It was so sweet. And in general, I would definitely suggest this one, even if you're wary of sick kid romances. Just be prepared for that shocking twist to maybe make you angry, or in my case, make me feel validated for feeling angry earlier. We love when our emotions are validated. But in general, nice pick. Really quick to read too, because so many of the pages have like very like sparse media stuff. And granted, this is an arc donated to a used bookstore, was not sold. So it might just be that like the actual formal copy doesn't have quite that much space. I don't know, but I definitely enjoyed it. Might have to look at what else this author has published. Don't know that I'm going to jump into the sick kids falling in love genre as a whole, but this one is definitely an excellent pick. All right. The last month has been gone over. Now it is time for the rolls. We have a +3 modifier, but no re-rolls, and we got to do it 7 times. Let's jump in. All right, we have a new die. Let's see how well it works. Roll 1. Okay, not bad. 13 plus 3 is 16, and that is the prompt, continue a series. And for this one, I am picking Superbia by Colette Rhodes. This is the sequel to Luxuria, the first in the Shades of Sin series, and I can't say a lot about it because a lot went down at the end of book 1 that is directly being played off of in this one. However, I really liked the dynamic between the characters in book 1, our romantic pairing, and I'm a little bit nervous because we're not going to have that here. Obviously, you're not just going to copy paste character dynamics in a romance series, but I am hoping to at least see the world being built a little bit more. The first book gave a lot of indications that the world was going to change drastically as this series goes on. And even if I'm not the biggest fan of enemies to lovers, I do like both of the characters from the first book, because this is the protagonist's sister and the head of the guard. So you saw both of these characters before and you already kind of got a hint, and they have like clear like physical chemistry, but she used to hunt shades and he was the head of defending shades, so it's a lot to overcome. And also there's a lot of like fallout from the big things that happen at the end of book 1. So there's still a lot to look forward to in this one, even if I think I probably will like the next one better, and I definitely loved the first one. However, it is a monster fucker book, so I'm gonna love it to a certain extent regardless, even if I love it a little bit less than the other monster romances. And it's really nice that I got such a softball right out of the gate. Thank you, dice. And roll 2. All right, roll number 2, 6 plus 3 is 9, and the prompt for this is middle grade. Now, I learned my lesson because last time I tried to get creative with the middle grade and seek out new middle grade and it went horribly. So now we're going back to Old Faithful and I am reading The Battle of the Labyrinth by Rick Riordan. I promised myself that the future times that middle grade came up as a prompt, I was just going to continue with this series until it was done. That way I wouldn't have to think too hard about coming up with new middle grade books because I really thought I read more middle grade than I do. I don't have a lot. But this is the fourth book in the Percy Jackson series. And again, it's the fourth book, so like a lot has happened, but I loved Percy's ongoing arc and him kind of like coming to accept himself as possible prophecy child. We don't know, question mark. And also the third book was the one that introduced Nico and that whole thing. So I'm really looking forward to this one. Looks intense. Love the cover. And it's a little bit thicker than the previous one, but it's still a mid-grade, so I'm still going to read it pretty quickly. And I always love that on my TBR. All right, roll 3. Okay. All right, 12 plus 3 equals 15, and that is a new prompt. This is the prompt for a review book. Like I mentioned before when I first made this game, I meant this list of prompts to be a kind of living list because as my reading moods and tastes change, it needs to shift so that the low numbers feel properly bleh, and the high numbers feel properly ha. And I really wanted to get to more review books, so this works. And for this one, I am picking Exit Ghost by Jennifer R. Donahue. This is effectively a Hamlet retelling, all about a young witch whose father has been murdered. She does her witchy magic and talks to Dad's ghost to find out that, oh hey, his old bestie was the one that did it, and bestie is now Mom's new fiance. So things happen as a result of that. She ends up meeting with some witch friends, some things happen, it gets dark, and she basically has to decide what price is she willing to pay for revenge. It is nice and properly dark, and I am hoping it will be dark enough to fit those bonus points for Realmathon. Kind of mid-rolls a lot of the time. Let's see what we get for roll 4. 7 plus 3 is 10, and this is one I haven't had before. Non-fiction. I had a couple different choices, but this one I went with How to Give Up Plastic by Will McCallum. I have been trying to go more and more eco-friendly. It is definitely a very slow process, but I've gotten to the point where, like, you know, we have reusable sandwich bags and reusable Tupperware containers that we get from other places. Like, we've been working at it, but it's very slow going. So I'm hoping that this will give me a little bit more help in that regards because it's a lot. And in general, I think this probably won't be very, very helpful to me directly. I think it's a lot of talk about the issues on a grand scale, but that's also very pertinent. And it's not too long, a little over 200 pages, which makes it a great pick for a longer TBR. All right, come on, roll 5. You don't want to end up in dice jail, do you? Oh, there we go. 15 plus 3 is 18. Another new pick for this, and that is Shifter Romance. And the minute I saw that, I knew exactly what I was picking. I am picking Stormwolf Summer by Zoe Chant. This is the first in its series. However, this is a kind of generational series, with this being the third series of a generation. And we have Buck, who in a previous series was the head of the Wildfire Hotshots. But by the end of that series, minor spoiler, he gets turned into a flying werewolf and now has to deal with that. And he is now the head counselor at this summer camp for shifter kids and finds his real mate. But don't think she's a shifter. She should be a shifter because it's a shifter summer camp, but the kids are just determined to get them together. So it's grumpy ex-Sunshine with all of these meddling little kids trying to get them together, and it sounds so cute. I adored the Wildfire Hotshots series. It was one of my favorites. I read every book obsessively as it came out. So the minute I saw this was coming, I was like, done on a TBR. And again, I'm really happy that the TBR challenge is paused for April because this is yet another one I still have to buy. All right, let's keep it up for roll 6. Oh. 3 plus 3 is 6. And again, we have Turned Into a Movie. Now, I have had one book in mind ever since I added this prompt to the list. I knew I needed to get to it eventually, and I think the rest of my list is lighthearted enough that it kind of balances it out. So for this one, I am reading Interview with a Vampire by Anne Rice. I've had this from a used bookstore for forever. I've known for a while that I wanted to get to it. However, I also know that this book is very, very sad. It's very dour in a way that the future books in the series aren't, because it was written when the author was still reeling with grief from the death of her daughter. And we can talk about the author and that whole nonsense. But again, I got it from a used bookstore. And I just wanted to see, because I've watched the movie and I liked it. So let's see if I like it as much here. And also, because this is spooky, it's proper dark, sad vampires, I do think it counts for the Sanctum reading genres. So that's another bonus point for my team. But if you don't know, this is all about the story of a young vampire coming to life and basically trying to make his way throughout the world while, being vampiric and stuff. This is not the fun vampires. This is vampire as, metaphor for loneliness and addiction or whatever. But it's supposed to be really good. I mean, the fandom is pretty strong, so this must have something going for it. And I guess I'll find out when I read it. All right, last one. Ready? Kiss for luck? Mwah, thank you. Okay, let's do it for roll 7. Another 13 plus 3 equals 16, and it is another continuous series. And I feel like this was the dice giving me a redo, because they were saying to me, Margaret, there was another book you should have picked that first time around, and you know what? You're right, dice, I should have. And that is How to Find a Princess by Alyssa Cole. This is the sequel to How to Catch a Queen, and yes, is the Sapphic Anastasia retelling. This is all about a young woman who is just living a regular life and listening to her grandma tell stories about how she went to this fancy country and had a fling with a dude, but then low-key turns out she's the heir to that country because of grandma's fling, and this private investigator comes sniffing around to drag her back into that royal life, and newly found princess is not about it. But you know what? Private investigator is hot and romance happens. So I'm really, really intrigued. I really hope that we get to have some queer norm goodness in this one. The first book, How to Catch a Queen, did have references to queer norm cultures in the universe, because in that country, polycule romances, like romances of 3, were like considered sacred. And so I'm really, really hopeful that we'll see some more queer goodness in this one. I think we will. But in general, yeah, I really just should continue with this one because I like the first one, and this was the reason I read that one in the first place. So I'm looking forward to it, and I hope it will be very good, and then I can continue the series further from here, because if this one is as good as I'm hoping it'll be, I'll probably want to continue. So that is it. That is my TBR for the month of April, and I'm feeling really good about it. I'm feeling really positive. I feel like I'm slowly starting to get into exactly what prompts I should have on my list, and that yes, I do need to add new ones and switch it around pretty regularly. Like I mentioned before, as much as I can give the rules for the general TBRPG, the actual list of prompts is really up to you. If you want to try this, you kind of got to know yourself. I know for some people, what I might put as a nat 1 might be someone else's nat 20. And I feel like I've got this one, but I might be overconfident. The big thing, of course, is going to be I got to get more of those review books, because again, I only fit 1 on this list. However, thankfully, a lot of these books are the kind of books that I will read very quickly. So again, we're going to try get through the TBR and then do more review books. My review list isn't even that large right now. It's just that a lot of those have been on there for a while, and I've been more and more turning down review books because I don't want to overload myself, so I need to get a lot more of them read. And also, there's just a lot of good review books on there that I'm interested in. I got a BIPOC queer contemporary romance on there right now that I am like itching to get to. So I will let you know at next month's TBR how well that did. Obviously, if I read review books, I will review them, so be on the lookout for my channel for that. And with nothing else to say, I hope you have a wonderful day and a marvelous tomorrow.